Within the next few years, we should have humans back on the moon, but what does that mean for the rest of us back on Earth?
The Apollo 11 moon landings often described as a moment where the world came together as one. Could Artemis do that again?
This episode is very much an opinion piece, so let us know your thoughts via our social media pages at Space and Things 1 on Twitter and at Space and Things Podcast on Instagram and Facebook, or via the contact form on our website.
And don't forget to please consider joining us over at patreon.com/Space and Things. But right now, enjoy episode 129 of the Space and Things podcast.
Oh my God! Unbelievable! But is it great to touch?
You're listening to Space and Things with Dave Giles and Emily Carney.
I'm Emily Carney.
And I'm Dave Giles, and welcome to episode 129 of the Space and Things podcast. You know, it's been 29 episodes in to this second century, and I still don't know whether to say 129 or 129. What do you think?
I think either or is fine. I think people, people will take it either way, personally, but it doesn't bother me. Either way is fine.
I know it really doesn't matter, but every time it comes up, I'm like, what do I say? Anyway, how you doing?
Good. Yeah, it's like going from 1999 to 2000 and nobody knew how to say it at the beginning. Like, how do we say this? Yeah, I am doing good. Just chilling with the cat right now. So.
Oh, nice. Very nice.
Yeah. Nice work if you can get it. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Hey, it's a big anniversary for you this week.
Yeah, I think it's a 12th anniversary of Space Hipsters, which is, I can't believe we're 12 now. We're almost teenagers. If you're in the group, we're currently celebrating, we're talking about the various moonwalkers right now.
Oh, nice. 12 years, 12 moonwalkers. Very good.
Yeah. And today we started. Today is, we're taping on Monday this week. So today we started with Neil and Buzz, and we'll tackle the rest of the moonwalkers this week. By Friday, we'll be on Young and Duke. Nice. And then we'll be on 17, I believe, on Saturday. If you're in the group also, I believe we're going to have some drawings and some prizes, so come join us. It'll be a lot of fun.
Nice.
Yeah, I think we're giving away the picture version, the 3-volume, the picture version of the Andy Chaikin's A Man on the Moon.
Oh, cool.
It's got some photos in it that are just really awesome. I think it's got a Apollo 16, like a training photo in it, and John Young has magnificent 1970s hair, so yeah, it's
excellent.
That's worth the whole set, in my opinion. So yeah, no, but it's excellent. So yeah, come join us. We're gonna have some fun.
Right, shall we crack on?
Yes, let's crack on.
Okay.
Oh, Houston, Fleet 16 has arrived. Roger 16, copy loud and clear.
We reached out to our Patreons recently to ask if there was anything they'd like us to discuss or any topics which we should cover. We got some really amazing responses, so our list is now pretty long, which is great. Dakota asked us this.
Looking back at that brief moment on International Human Unity, the evening of July 20th, 1969, what do y'all think the Artemis landings will do for international culture, peace, and unification? What will Mars do? How can we use spaceflight as an avenue for peace across humanity in the next few decades? And today, that is what we're going to discuss.
I love this so much, so I'll start if that's okay.
Yep, go right ahead.
Obviously, this is a weird one because neither you or I were alive at that point. And I'm wondering how true it was that the world really held its breath for a moment and all came together. Yes, TV coverage was extensive and available. When you read a book like Teasdale Harmony's Operation Moonglow book, you can see that it did have a big global impact, but it didn't reach every single person. Not like the whole world stopped. You have time zones. You have other dead spots where people wouldn't have been listening. So I think it was effective in certain countries and in certain places, but I think sometimes us as space fans may blow it out of proportion a little bit. I don't know what your thoughts on that are.
Yeah, I think personally, I kind of think the same thing. I think that you know, the moon landing was memorable for certain people, but I think that these are my thoughts, and I'm probably more cynical than most, but I think once the moon landing happened, I think that I definitely think it did captivate the public, and it did unite us for that brief period. I don't want to get too political. I think the president at the time, and this is where I'm going to get people blocking me on Facebook and in Twitter, I think the president at the time in our country was more excited that Ted Kennedy wrecked a car than Apollo 11. I think that he didn't really care about human spaceflight as much as some would say he did, granted with what he did to the Apollo program eventually and what happened, with the space shuttle. So I think the result of it, unfortunately, was very short-lived. And I think after Apollo 11, people really just lost interest. And unfortunately, they gained interest when Apollo 13 happened because people almost died, which is terrible. And that's not making light of what happened on Apollo 13 at all. And thankfully, all three returned home alive. But I just think after Apollo 11, unfortunately, people just lost interest. It was something we'd already done. It became, I guess, routine. There was a piece I did for my National Space Society blog, The Space Available, about probably a year and a half ago, I'm guessing. And it was a memo that Phil Chapman sent to all the astronaut scientists. And part of the memo, he was basically like, look, NASA's doing a terrible job in promoting the moon landings. Like, it's doing a bad job at sort of marketing itself at this point. And I think he was really right. I think after Apollo 11, NASA sort of gave up in, marketing Apollo and making, I think before Apollo 11, they really did a great job. Look at the book Marketing the Moon. I mean, it really shows you how much was done in the decade before the moon landing to really get people excited about spaceflight. And I do feel after Apollo 11, you saw that sort of drop off because it was something we had done, right? And people viewed it as, well, we've done that before, and it wasn't as exciting to them. So I don't know. I tend to look at it through a more cynical view, unfortunately. I think people did lose interest in it, which I don't know if it was a contributor to. I think the contributors were probably more political than anything. I think when Apollo eventually went away, the person on the street wasn't really upset about it. I think space enthusiasts realized what we were losing, but I don't think regular people were really, they were, the last moon landing, whatever. And I hate saying it because it sounds very negative. I would love to have something more positive to say about that period of time.
Yeah, I think you're right. So that does lead you to the conclusion that perhaps we blow it out of proportion a little bit in terms of how much of an impact it may have had at the time and how much the world stopped for that one moment. And maybe they did. And if you were alive at that point, listeners, please let us know. I mean, of course, if you were there watching it on the TV, then for you, the world did stop at that moment. But did the whole world stop is another thing. And in many ways, I think there is more of an opportunity for the world to stop with Artemis than there was with Apollo, because of the fact that we can all watch live streams and the internet is extremely readily available to every person on a phone. Again, I appreciate not globally, but almost a vast proportion of the world has access to be able to watch these things. I think the technology is going to be better. I think we're potentially going to have live footage of the landing if they want to show it, which is a whole other issue. They might decide they don't want us to see that, which is fine, just in case. I wouldn't be offended by that.
Yeah.
But them arriving on the moon and then taking those steps, I think it's going to be huge. The cameras are going to be so much better. I think part of the issue with Apollo, especially Apollo 11, is those images were so poor in relation to what they even achieved 3 years later with Apollo 16 and 17. The images got so much better that were being sent back. And now we're 50 years on, and think of what we've already seen come back from Artemis 1 with the GoPros.
Yeah, and those are just GoPros.
Exactly. I think we're going to get some amazing views. I think we're going to have a more diverse crew, and I think that's going to help. I think it's going to have more of an impact on that level. So I think at the precise moment those first steps happen or the landing happens, I think you're going to see a huge stop. Every news outlet's going to be talking about it. I think it's going to be front page of every news. Everyone, just look. I mean, I'm thinking about this country with how it was just for Bob and Doug's flight, the first, and that was interesting for this country to take that much interest in that, because that was all about America having launches from America again. That was what was exciting about that, and the first commercial vehicle to take humans into space. But the hype around that alone and how many people were talking about it, that's not walking on the moon. That's not landing on the moon. So I think it's going to be huge.
Yeah, I think once Artemis gets underway, and I don't know how many missions they'll end up being. I think a lot of the history obviously has yet to be written for Artemis, but I think once it gets underway, it's got to be huge. It's got to preempt, all the television and everything like that. Probably all over the world. I think it will, because we're just going to get, I'm just, like you said, I'm thinking the pictures we're going to get back are going to be crazy phenomenal, and they're going to be, live, whereas a lot of the imagery we got from Apollo, we had to wait for it.
Yeah.
And this isn't an insult against anybody who worked on the television imagery back then. It was 1969. It was not really, what's the word I'm searching for? It was not very sophisticated. And you saw over the course of the program, even within 3 short years, it got a lot better. So, yeah, I think the imagery we're going to see return back is going to be probably near instantaneous. It's going to be incredible. I really think that'll be a big showstopper for a lot of people worldwide. And I do think it'll unite people worldwide. I do think NASA does have I'm not attacking NASA here, and I understand that they're a federal agency and they're very much constrained by budgets. And I understand that totally. It would be wonderful to have an unlimited budget and to have as much money as they were allocated during Apollo, but they just don't, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of selfish for just me to think, they're going to have all these resources, because they don't. But I do wish they did a little better job of marketing it. I think when Artemis 1 happened, people got really excited, and now it's just kind of died down again, and people are like, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
And I feel like, man, we need some momentum to get us to the next one. The next one is going to be more like Apollo 8, where people orbit the moon. Still a big deal. That's still a huge deal. That to do that on a second flight of a program is going to be huge.
Yeah.
That's a BFD. I'm not going to say what the F means, but that's a big deal. I really think they need to really just lean into that and just market the hell out of it. Like, this is the thing. We all got to watch this. You got to try to see it. I really think they need to just really lean into that and just be on that every day. And I think they're doing an okay job at it. I just think it's more of a matter of they probably don't have the resources allocated to them to, have this big splashy marketing campaign, because you have to hire people for that. And that costs money. And I totally understand that. And another thing I think that might interest some people is in the 70s, NASA really began to champion its spin-offs, which were basically things that were developed because of spaceflight.
Yeah.
And some of it is very, nowadays would be like, well, duh, of course they did that. But for example, one of the technologies they did was near instantaneous, almost like Skype type communication, right? Nowadays we do Zoom.
Yeah.
But that's something that was developed indirectly because of the space program. Hey, we're doing a podcast right now. Dave's in freaking London. Okay? That's a big deal. That's a big thing. And I think that NASA needs to sort of do a better job. And I think they do an adequate job of championing this is what we could develop because of Artemis in the future. And I think those things can be space manufacturing, perhaps.
Yep.
Maybe space terraforming, which will be a big deal. Planting crops in lunar soil. That is a big deal. And I think also maybe space habitation, living on the moon.
Yeah, sure.
Living on another world. I think these are things they really sort of need to, again, lean into and really discuss, as, okay, these are things that could come about because of Artemis, and that could really change our future. So I've gone on way too long. When you asked me this morning to discuss this, these were the first things I thought about were, I honestly think, I really think, I'm not just giving lip service. I think we're really going to see that in the future, the big dividends from Artemis will be those kinds of things, like technological innovations that we haven't even seen yet. Just like Apollo. I mean, microprocessors were developed in part because of the Apollo program, right?
Yeah, miniaturization, etc.
Yeah. Yeah, and nowadays, we take it for granted that we have everything on our phone, right? But back then, that was a big deal. And it's a big deal that we have it now, I think, at our fingertips. I mean, I do everything on this little itty bitty phone. Yeah. I do think I take it for granted, but that's mind-blowing to me.
Yeah. Anytime you drop your phone and you break the screen or you're without it or you misplace it, how weird it feels to not have a phone. It's very odd, isn't it? Like, what? Yeah. Where is it? What? Oh, no. My life has fallen apart. It can feel like that, can't it?
When you leave your phone at home on accident. I tell you what, I left my phone at home last week and I just was like, I feel naked. Because you're so used to having that on you. But I do, seriously though, I do everything with the phone. I don't just call people on it. I schedule things on it. I work from it sometimes even. If you go out in public, you have just your phone, you can send emails, just things like that. But these were things that were developed indirectly because of the Apollo program, because we had miniaturization, and it's really changed our lives. And I think that's the part of Artemis that we're going to really see dividends on, is we're probably going to see technologies, and not just from Apollo, from shuttle as well, from the ISS. We're going to see technologies and things that are going to really revitalize our lives. I also think in medical technology as well. These are things I really think about, and I think a lot of people think, well, it's a space program. Why are we out there? We're just wasting money. And I'm like, no, we're actually doing things for ourselves. You just don't see them.
Yeah, absolutely. All those are really valid points. And I think there's something we can talk about for hours and hours.
Yes.
The issue I see with the Artemis program, and again, this may come into how well it's marketed, so it does link into what you've just said. The issue will be is how long it holds the attention. And this goes back to what your first point as well about the Apollo program not holding the attention very long. In many ways, it's got even harder to hold people's attention than it was back then. We have so many more distractions, so many more things that grab our attention. And the moment of the world all coming together to celebrate something could be so brief. It could be the briefest of moments. I hope not. I hope that actually this does rally people together and bring people together, and we can start thinking about the overview effect and all those other things and getting more people up and seeing it and bringing us together and thinking about humanity as Dakota has pointed out within their original question. But I think it's going to be tough. I think the world is so divided right now, and even when it may come together to watch this one moment, that will soon be forgotten. And I'm going to use the example of the Olympics in this country in 2012 when we hosted the Olympics. I've never known London like it. The place was buzzing. The atmosphere was amazing. Everyone was so together. Everyone was helping each other out. By the end of the year, that was forgotten about. People had gone back to their own way of life. But for those 2 weeks in the July and the Paralympics in September, the 2 weeks of those as well, I've never known London like it. So a single event, be it sporting, cultural, can bring people together. But maintaining it, I think, is the hard thing. And in the run-up to that London Olympics, there was a whole lot of talk about legacy. What will be the legacy of the Games? And I don't think they ever cracked that. And I think that's the hardest thing. What's the legacy of Apollo? Well, we can talk about technological improvements, but I think it's a hard sell.
Yeah.
And what will be the legacy of Artemis? Is it going to be Mars? Is the legacy of Artemis that it doesn't stop this time and we keep going forward? If that's the legacy, then we've got a chance of it growing and keep going. But If not, I don't know. I don't know how well we can keep these things going for.
Like you said, I agree. I think the legacy of Apollo is hard, it's hard to define in a lot of ways because it ended, in my opinion, kind of prematurely. And we can say that, okay, there are a lot of great spin-offs from Apollo, and that's true. But in the same vein, it's like, I think people just was like, okay, we went to the moon once. I think save for space enthusiasts who love this stuff, and it's awesome that there are people who love this stuff and who keep the feeling alive, especially for people like us who weren't alive back then. I think that's awesome. But I really think, on a day-to-day basis, people just don't think about the legacy that Apollo has left us and things like that. And that really sucks. I am concerned about that for Artemis. And I do hope, and like I said, this is really still left to be written, as, I don't have any clue where the program will end up going, but I do hope, like you said, the program kind of becomes like a For All Mankind, where it just keeps going on. Because I love in the TV show For All Mankind, I love that they didn't end Apollo.
Yeah.
It just kept going and it kept getting more advanced. And then they ended up, settling the moon and putting a permanent settlement for people up there. And we're seeing now the show is going to Mars. They're probably still on the moon. Season 4 is coming and they're probably going to kill everybody, but whatever. No, I'm sorry. They're probably going to run our entire lives this season, but no, seriously though, I love that idea on For All Mankind that they show that spaceflight is generational, right? That's what I hope to see from Artemis. And it's kind of already done it because it uses space shuttle technology. So they're using the technology from that generation to get this going, which I think is really a cool and kind of a poignant thing. But I think that hopefully will become its legacy, that I'm hoping it'll be a long-running program that shows that, okay, spaceflight is something that can be done from generation to generation, and these missions can build onto each other from generation to generation, if that makes sense. Because I think there is some of that in the space program, oh God, Dave's going to kill me. I'm going to have to mention the name of that space station. I do believe a lot of the ISS missions have built on what Skylab did, for example. So there is that generational...
And on Mir as well. Things do get
absolutely
built on, don't they? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So you do see that happen, but I'd like to see more of that, I guess. Generational missions that kind of just build off on other people's discoveries. I mean, wouldn't that be cool if somebody based something on, if somebody did the first mission 100 years later, that's the kind of stuff I think about. So I think it has yet to be written, but I hope that it goes on long enough that we do see some kind of dividends from it, whether it's scientific or maybe technological innovations that'll change our lives. If not my life, or maybe, my descendants' lives or something like that. I think that would be cool.
I just want to bring up the second part of Dakota's question now. How can we use spaceflight as an avenue for peace across humanity in the next few decades? Do you think we'll get to a Gene Roddenberry style unity on this planet based around the fact that in space there are no borders for our country? Or do you think that's so pie in the sky ridiculous? Do you think there will always be issues on this earth beyond what happens?
Oh boy, that's a great question. Personally, I love the idea of having a Star Trek type, set up where there are people, multinational missions, from people from even opposing companies. And I'd like to think that somebody, whether it's SpaceX or somebody, will do something like that in the future. I don't know. I'm just throwing a name out there. It could be anybody. It could be Jeff Bezos. It could be, who knows? I'd love to think that could have happened. And I think a lot of people wouldn't mind it happening, but I think it's just realistic to think that governments will get in the way of it. They won't like certain things. I don't foresee the United States flying with someone from China anytime soon, sadly enough. And it would be nice if we could make that work out, but I just don't think we're in the space right now to have that.
Yeah.
Does it suck? Yes, absolutely. Do I necessarily like that? No. but I think that's just how things are at the moment. And same thing with Russia. And we're flying I won't get into that. There's some breaking news this week about Russia in space, but we'll probably get to it in later in the show. But, I just think things are such that even if it was a private mission, governments would be like, we can't let you do that. Sorry. There's that idealistic part of me that thinks, yeah, maybe in the future, but not the near future.
Well, I think this has been a really interesting discussion. I'd love to hear what listeners think. Do we think that the Artemis program, and again, look at the Artemis Accords, they're not being signed up by that many countries yet. I think the fact that it's American-led does put some countries off, unfortunately, and that might be hard to hear for some Americans, but I think that's the nature of it. But do we think that the Artemis landings have a potential to bring people together? Or will it be just like it is in For All Mankind, for those who haven't watched it, where, even when we get past that, it's still always there. And there's still issues. There's still always someone coming in and upsetting the what could be a big unifying moment. Someone always comes along and wrecks it a little bit. Might we see that? Who knows? I'm such a positive person, but I'm quite skeptical about if there is a moment, how long it will last. And I hope there's a moment, and I hope it lasts. But I think the work has to be put in now. And I'm not sure it is. And again, part of that is because how do you, as Emily said earlier, how do you fund that? How do you fund not only the engineering, but the marketing and the diplomacy as well? All that has to go into it. And I think in some ways it's being attempted, but not enough to really be that huge global long-term impact. That doesn't take away from how important and how excited I am about it, though.
Okay, stand by for pitch over. Oh, are we coming in? Oh, baby.
All right. So, Emily, what's caught your eye in spaceflight this week? Is it the break-in Russian story?
Yeah, I really don't know much about it, other because I've been kind of busy, but all I know is that there's another leak. This time it is on the Progress. I think it's the Progress MS-21 spacecraft, if I'm not mistaken. There's been a lot of speculation, is this a workmanship issue? But this is the second one in 2 months, so that's not really good. So that's a developing story. I don't know exactly how NASA and Roscosmos are going to even handle that yet. I know they're going to try to do a sort of a rescue mission for the Soyuz that had a similar issue. I don't believe they're going to try to fly people home in that. They're going to bring another spacecraft up to try to bring them home, the crew home. So, yeah, that's crazy. That did catch my eye, but hopefully those issues will be mitigated in the future. It's a little scary. Okay, you're going to die. One thing I did notice this week, and it's not even remotely a current story. One of my ways to wind down in the evening is I like to go on Pinterest and just look at Disney stuff, right? Because I'm a Disney freak. Those of you who know me on like social media, I love Epcot, and I like to go there with my family and stuff like that. I don't live that far away, so I like to, drive over there sometimes with my family, and we just hang out. So I found an article, and I need to investigate more into this. I got to write a story about this. I think it was the Space Mountain opening in Florida. I think it was. I don't think it was the one in Disneyland, which is in California. But I believe there were astronaut guests there. Like the Mercury 7 were at the opening of Space Mountain in Florida with astronaut Mickey and all that. And I had no idea. But that makes sense that they would be there at the opening of Space Mountain, which, by the way, if you've ever been, I don't want to spoil the ride if you've never been on it. I know you're going to Disney soon, right?
Yeah, I've been when I was younger, under the age of 11, so that long ago. But yes, I remember it. Okay.
You were probably tall enough to get on Space Mountain at that point.
Just about, yes.
When I was 11, I was not big enough to be on that ride yet.
No.
I had to wait a few years to go on it. Yeah, if you've ever taken Space Mountain, it's honestly, it's not even a space ride. It's more just like a big ass roller coaster in the dark. But I personally love it. It's not a ride for everybody. Personally, I love Space Mountain just because it's kind of 70s and kitschy and stuff. I love that era from Disney where they're like, we're in the future, and the future looks like the 70s, you know?
Yeah.
But you're like, we're still in the future, right? It just looks, like the monorail and things like that. I love that stuff. So I found this article that the original 7 astronauts and Betty Grissom went to the Space Mountain opening, and I absolutely have to find photos of this and write something about it for my blog. I was like, oh my God, but it makes sense that they would be there. So yeah, so that's really what I noticed this week. So if anybody, I'm looking in newspapers.com for articles. There's got to be articles about the opening. And if anybody has photos of it, please send them over. I'm sure Mickey is in a spacesuit and stuff. He did have a space costume that said USA on it. I remember that because he met the Apollo Soyuz crew in his spacesuit.
So I do remember seeing Neil Armstrong and Mickey Mouse outside Space Mountain. I'm not sure that's from the opening, though. I've seen that image.
I think that happened in the 90s or the 2000s.
Yeah, I just pulled up that photo. It's definitely later as Neil looked a lot older. But this article sounds like it would be perfect for your Space in the 70s series of your blog post. It sounds perfect for you.
Yeah, I'm hoping to find pictures of them actually at Disney World or at the Contemporary Resort. I'm sure that's where they were put because that's the swanky resort that's right by Space Mountain. Yeah. And I've been there. It's gorgeous. It's still stunning. It's very expensive to stay there, but it's a very stunning looking place. If I can afford to eat there, that's about it. But seriously, it's beautiful. But I'm sure back then they probably stayed there they probably got comped rooms or something. But I got to find pictures because I'm sure the photos are just 70s-tastic, with mutton chops, shiny Kiana shirts and platform shoes and stuff. I gotta find this. So that's really what I've noticed this week. And everybody's like rolling their eyes like, I thought you were gonna have something current. Nope, it was just a 70s story that I'm gonna pursue now because the photos are gonna be fire. That's all.
Yeah, well, I can't wait to see that. And when you post it, obviously we'll put it in our show notes.
So Dave, what have you been looking at this week?
Okay, so I think this is a cool story, and I'm sure you've seen it. It's been announced that SpaceX will launch the first Saudi Arabian woman to space on the Axiom 2 mission. There's going to be 2 Saudis on the 4-person flight. I did not see this coming. Maybe it'd been announced previously. I know the Saudi space program had said that they expect their first female astronaut to fly in 2023. That came out last year. And currently, the Saudi space program has 4 astronauts, 2 men and 2 women, which let's just think about that for a second. Now, I know Saudi Arabia's got problems, and I know I don't wish to whitewash over any of those, but this is their first astronaut class, and they've done a 50-50 gender split.
Yep, they did it right.
A country which has issues with women driving and other things like that. They've managed to make that happen, and yet other nations, it took them a lot longer. That's all I'm going to say about it. That's all I'm going to say.
I agree totally.
Of course, Axiom is a private company that are sending up crews currently to the International Space Station, and they had their first mission last year. You may remember us talking about that, and this is the second mission. Now, weirdly, Emily earlier was talking about how she felt it was unlikely that China would be allowed to send astronauts or taikonauts on board a private US company's mission. And yet here we have the Saudi Arabian Space Agency hiring 2 seats on Axiom. I think this is a cool story. So Axiom 2 coming soon. Peggy Whitson will be the commander. We knew that already. And the pilot is going to be this guy called John Schaffner, who's not someone I know much about or anything about. And then you've got these 2 Saudis who are going to be going to the International Space Station. I'm going to attempt to say their names. The 2 are Rayana Banawi and Ali Al-Khani. And they'll be the first Saudi Arabians to travel to the ISS and only the second and third people ever from Saudi Arabia to go to space. The first, I think, was on the space shuttle in 1985, wasn't it? I think, or 84.
Yeah, and I think he was a prince too, or a sultan or something. He was kind of high up. He traveled on a mission with a woman who I think was Shannon Lucid, and I think at the time that caused some, I guess, controversy, because he had to fly with a woman. And obviously it's not that big of a deal, but at the time it was like, whoa, women and men flying together, that's, that was very progressive at the time. And this just shows you how far not only we've come as a society, but also how far the Saudi Arabia's come. And I think it's awesome. And you already pointed this out. I love that they got their astronaut class 50-50 the first time.
Yeah. And to be clear, I don't want that to whitewash other issues that are going on in that country, which we need to talk about.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to talk via diplomatic means, suggest to another part of the world that they're not doing things right, which is always so condescending and can be done so badly. But you also have to congratulate them when they do things which are how you would like to see the world, especially when they've done it right first time. And it took the US, I mean, I can't even talk about the UK because we don't have our own national program, but it took the US nearly 20 years before they had any women in their astronaut class. I know times have changed, but that's what we're talking about. Times have changed that even in Saudi Arabia are doing this.
Yeah, and times changed more quickly, I think, there, whereas I think it got more, it's hard to say. I think things progressed. Maybe I'm wrong, and if I am wrong, I somebody please reach out, let me know. But I think, the fact that they did it 50-50 the first time shows that, they're aware that times are changing. Whereas the United States, we were very slow.
Yeah.
To recognize that. So kudos to them for doing that. And like I said, we're not trying to gloss over some of the real issues that their government has, but we want to salute them for that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I think that we have to understand that at the deepest possible level, opening the high frontier means making possible and ensuring the survival of the human race.
Thank you very much for listening this week. We hope you enjoyed our discussion, and don't forget to let us know your thoughts on what we talked about today. Also, this was very much triggered by our wonderful Patreon subscribers. And if you want to be involved, just head over to patreon.com/spaceandthings.
Yeah, big thanks to all those who are in that group and all of you who continue to listen as well. A big thank you to Dakota for suggesting this topic as well. Really do appreciate that. Hey, I just realized I have an apology to make. I think in my head, in the interview last week, I think I made a mistake. I think I said I was reading a book about George Lowe written by Jay Galantine. The George Lowe book was not written by Jay Galantine. It was written by Richard Jurek. And I know that because I was reading it at the time. And we've had Richard on the show. But I've been very tired recently. And I happened to be looking at another book in the Nebraska Press by Jay Galantine, which was next to my Richard Jurek book. So, Richard, I apologize for doing that. And if anyone was listening going, has Jay Galantine written a book about George Lowe? No, he hasn't, as far as I'm aware. This was Richard Jurek's book, which is amazing. And our episode with Richard Jurek was amazing. So I apologize to Richard for the miscredit there, although Jay Galantine has also got some awesome books out there as well. Man, I'm digging myself so many holes here. I may not have got it wrong. It's just in my head. I need to go back and listen to it.
Yeah. I'm sure George Lowe has done a walk-on cameo in some of Jay Galantine's books. So
I'm sure he's in there. Yeah, exactly.
I'm sure he's in there doing like a, hey, I'm here.
Yeah.
It's me.
But actually, I should have brought this up at the time. Actually, I would love to know what George Lowe would think about how space is going right now. I think that would have been incredible to know how someone like him, what he thought about all of this and the Artemis program and what it can do for all of us in the future, because I think he's that kind of person that would have had great insight on that.
I'll just close that thought with this. The Jurek book about George Lowe, for me, kind of taught me how to be a manager.
Yeah,
seriously.
It's incredible.
Like, that book, I mean, you gotta, if you have any interest in like management, just read that book. That'll tell you exactly how to do it. I mean, seriously, So yeah, go get that book. It's incredible.
Absolutely. Anyway, as you can tell, my voice is a little scratchy today, so I could do with a brew. But remember, when you turn your kettle on in space, no one can hear you steam.
Space and Things has been brought to you by And Things Productions.